Now, for a moment, just reflect back on the Hezekiah video that we enjoyed during the convention season last year. It was amazing, and what a beautiful job the brothers did in audio video depicting one angel that destroyed 185,000 men.
It was spectacular.
Disease. How to reduce the risk. Every day, your body wages war against enemies that are silent and unseen, but potentially deadly. Foreign invaders, such as bacteria, viruses, and parasites, threaten your health. This series of articles focuses on microorganisms and other infective agents that threaten your health.
This morning, measles concerns are on the rise as the highly contagious virus spreads across the country. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there are now at least 228 confirmed cases in 12 states from coast to coast. That's up 117 cases in 1 month, 22 in just 1 week.
We're continuing to see the numbers rise because the disease is so highly contagious. And every time you have pockets of unvaccinated people, the disease is going to spread very quickly.
Officials confirming 6 outbreaks. In Washington state, more than 800 students believed to be exposed to measles in one county have reportedly been told to stay home for up to 3 weeks as a precaution. A public health emergency was declared in the county in January. New York State is facing 2 outbreaks, many of those sickened part of Orthodox Jewish communities, where there has been a debate over whether vaccinations are against their religion. One doctor in a hotspot telling NBC News he is accelerating the measles vaccine schedule for local children in order to protect them.
The disease has been spreading rapidly nationwide. There are 333 confirmed cases of the measles across 15 states so far this year, nearly surpassing last year's total already. And just yesterday, health officials in Silicon Valley issued a warning that an international traveler may have exposed thousands of people there to the disease.
Medical researchers have since eliminated or greatly reduced the threat of some infectious diseases, including smallpox and polio. Recently, however, others, such as yellow fever and dengue, have made a comeback. Why? Consider these factors. Every year, millions of people travel around the globe, often transporting disease-causing agents. According to an article in the journal Clinical Infectious Diseases, virtually all of the contagious virulent infections can be spread by international travelers.
Health officials in St. Lucia have quarantined hundreds of people on a cruise ship after a case of measles was confirmed on board. The boat is reportedly owned and operated by the Church of Scientology. The island's chief medical officer said in light of the outbreak of the highly infectious disease in the U.S., officials made the decision to bar all passengers from leaving.
Some bacteria have developed resistance to antibiotics. The world is heading towards a post-antibiotic era in which common infections can once again kill, states the World Health Organization.
A state of emergency went into effect overnight in Rockland County, New York. It bans unvaccinated children from most public places.
My goal is to have this measles officially eradicated again in 2019.
His emergency order went into effect at midnight, banning unvaccinated children under the age of 18 from entering public places, including schools, shopping malls, restaurants, and houses of worship.
The outbreak here is concentrated in the Orthodox Jewish community, and the county is now telling parents either get your children vaccinated or keep them home.
It is an attention grabber. I wouldn't call it a scare tactic. We're looking to get people to understand the severity of what we're facing.
Critics of the ban say it infringes on civil liberties and could be unconstitutional. It will last for 30 days or until parents decide to get their child a measles vaccine, which is at least 93% effective. Any parent of an unvaccinated child who violates the ban could face up to a $500 fine or up to 6 months in jail.
We tell parents about getting their kids vaccinated. Measles, They have to get the shot. The vaccinations are so important. This is really going around now.
They have to get their shot.
During the Korean War, China and North Korea accused the United States of testing biological weapons and releasing disease-carrying insects against their forces. Declassified documents have revealed that the United States carried out widespread testing on human subjects at Fort Detrick during the 1950s, earning the Army camp the nickname Fort Doom. In a project known as Operation Whitecoat, authorities first used Army volunteers. When the men demanded to know what substances they were being exposed to, the government recruited Seventh-day Adventists who, as conscientious objectors, refused to be part of the military draft.
Operation Whitecoat.
Witnesses, having descended from the Seventh-day Adventists, continue to have several things in common, like claiming conscientious objector status for military service, or the belief that Jesus is Michael the Archangel, and the unconsciousness of man in death. But the most important thing they have in common is a worldwide door-to-door evangelizing mission, where they are overzealous to shake hands with the general public while offering propaganda literature, sometimes even on the topic of disease itself.
So it's as good as done. This is what's going to happen, regardless of how people view us when we preach this good news, because this is good news, the destruction of the world empire, false religion, the beginning of the Great Tribulation. This is spectacular news for God's people, and until it takes place, they won't believe it.
In the Awake magazine, May 22, 2003, it states, almost all new and improved diseases owe their comebacks to human meddling.
One angel destroyed 185,000.
It was spectacular.
An article from Forbes magazine states, it is nearly impossible to mount a focused, effective response because the threats and their perpetrators are too diverse. If you can imagine something bad, it's probably going to happen. We just don't know when or where. Which brings me to the subject of biowar, the use of microbes to attack target populations. This is not a new idea. Europeans gave Native Americans blankets tainted with smallpox during the early colonial period, knowing their lack of resistance to the disease would wipe out whole tribes. What is new today is that the virulent pathogens, microorganisms that spread disease, can be readily spawned in laboratories.
The world is well aware of the Ebola virus in some countries in West Africa, and the global concern that the disease would spread to epidemic proportions beyond that region.
But in spite of this looming concern, 76,000 attended the memorial, 11 times the number of publishers we have.
That is truly amazing.
Brothers and sisters, it was prophesied that in the last days there would be pestilence. Luke chapter 21 verse 11 makes it clear. It is part of the sign that the kingdom will soon end Satan's rule.
Well, let me ask you this. Did the branch office receive any comments on how we handled the Ebola threat?
We received many favorable remarks from those inside and outside of the organization. One congregation wrote this. Unknown to us, there was a healthcare volunteer who was sent to the Kingdom Hall to teach us about the Ebola virus and its prevention. But after the meeting, he said this, I came here purposely to teach your congregation about the Ebola virus, but the information you people had is more than what I came to teach.
Very interesting.
Richard Falkenrath is a Harvard professor and government advisor on the threat of biological weapons. He's concerned about their proliferation.
More and more people are simply learning how to work with bacteria, work with viruses than they were in the past. Most of them are never going to do anything harmful with this knowledge, but some very, very small percentage might be. And the knowledge that this real revolution in the biosciences is creating is going to seep out there and go through all society, and somewhere in that mix might emerge someone who wants to do great harm.
We also forwarded the letters that we sent to the congregations regarding Ebola precautions to the Liberia Ministry of Health and Social Welfare. We received the following comment via email. The minister has instructed to convey his appreciation for your efforts.
Very interesting. Now, you took all the precautions that you could take, but realistically, individually, we are not protected from the effects of such a pestilence. How many of our dear publishers have we lost?
Sadly, at this point, 11 witnesses have died from Ebola in Liberia, and one passed away in Sierra Leone.
Successful genetic targeting is one of the golden prizes of medicine today. Millions of dollars are being invested in it in the hope of finding an answer to some of our biggest killer diseases. But ironically, this is the very technology that is needed to identify and kill specific groups of people. An organism that could target specific people would be the coming of age of biological weapons. For the first time, there would be no risk of infecting the wrong people, removing the problem of delivery once and for all. Because of these technological advances, the next 10 years could produce a targeted virus or bacteria of this type, selecting its victims by distinct racial groups. It would be the world's first ethnic weapon. A biological agent that could successfully bring about a genocide.
I'm sure our brothers have been bolstered with the resurrection hope, which is held out for fellow believers as well as family members. For fellow believers as well as family members.
For fellow believers as well as family members.
The Four Horsemen. Who are they? The Four Horsemen may seem mysterious and terrifying, but that does not have to be the case. Why not? Because the Bible and the events of modern history help us to identify clearly what each horseman pictures.
Jehovah's Witnesses have been conditioned to believe that the first horseman of the apocalypse is their savior, Jesus, or Michael the Archangel, that will somehow conquer all the nations before the Battle of Armageddon. They base this belief on Revelation chapter 6, verse 2.
And look, a white horse, and the one seated upon it had a bow, and a crown was given him. And he went forth conquering, and to complete his conquest.
Can this rider on the white horse really be referring to Jesus, considering the words found later in Revelation chapter 16?
And I saw 3 unclean, inspired expressions that looked like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the wild beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. They are, in fact, expressions inspired by demons, and they go forth to the kings of the entire inhabited earth, to gather them together to the war of the great day of God the Almighty. And they gathered them together to the place that is called in Hebrew, Armageddon.
Very interesting.
It is fitting Watchtower views the first horseman as their leader, considering their obsession with apocalyptic themes. But the fourth and final horseman can shed light as to why they follow their leader.
And I saw, and look, a pale horse, and the one seated on it had the name Death, and the grave was closely following him, and authority was given them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with a long sword, and with food shortage, and with deadly plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth.
The fourth rider represents death due to plague and other causes. Soon after 1914, the Spanish flu killed tens of millions. Possibly some 500 million people were infected, about 1 out of every 3 humans then alive. Remember this, Jesus went out conquering in 1914, confining Satan to the earth. But Jesus did not then complete his conquest. Jesus will not only terminate the ride of the other three horsemen, but even reverse the effects of their destructive ride.
Could evangelical fundamentalism be the fourth horseman of the apocalypse? And could Watchtower be at the forefront of that agenda?
Jehovah's Witnesses would be delighted to show you in your Bible how you can be ready when the ride of those horsemen ends.